introduce my coming-of-age novel, Wild Ones. Wild Ones is the story of a 16-year-old girl in the foster care system who gets sent to live on a ranch in southeastern Oregon. I'm going to read from chapter 1. The summer before my mother died and I became a ward of the state, she took me to the Steens Mountains in southeastern Oregon to see the annual wild horse roundup. Back then, anyone with a few dollars in their pocket for the adoption fee and a trailer to haul away a horse could take home one of the Mustangs, feral creatures that rarely encountered humans. We'd driven nearly 200 hot, dusty miles from our home in central Oregon, the road spanning precipitous cliffs, crossing dry reservation land, and finally bisecting lush dairy farms. Soon we could see the county fairgrounds that sprawled across the crisp brown August grass and gravel parking lot like scattered pieces of dirty red Lego. After parking the Jeep, we wove our way between the parked cars to the enormous covered arena where the auction would take place. While I pressed close to my mother so we wouldn't get separated, eager kids pushed forward through the crowd, straining to be free from their parents' hands so they could get a closer look. A few dads hoisted their kids up to sit on their shoulders, as only a tenuous line existed between excitement and danger. But my mother and I were mesmerized, oblivious to the flying hoofs and rolling puffs of dust as hundreds of wild horses fought for freedom. A boiling sea of terrified horseflesh whirling around the steel pole-holding corrals in the huge fairgrounds arena. "I didn't think there were any Mustangs left in them wild," I said, wiping my stinging eyes free of the hoof-blown grit. When my mother didn't answer, I turned. Tears coursed down her cheeks, carving snake-belly trails through the dust. A little embarrassed, I glanced away from her, hoping no one else had noticed. A sliver of sunbeam had squeezed through a hole in the tin roof of the arena and shone down on her head, igniting highlights that looked like copper wire in her dark brown hair. At that moment, she didn't seem much older than me. Her sad expression made me realize it wasn't the dirt making her eyes water. I'd seen her look like that before when she talked about my father. She flashed a smile that disappeared as quickly as it arrived. Then, as if ashamed by her show of emotion, her eyes couldn't meet mine for a few minutes. Instead, she fumbled in her pocket for a tissue and, not finding one, wiped her eyes on her sleeve. As a kid, she'd bought a pony with babysitting money, spending every spare minute grooming, riding, or just sharing secrets with him. It wasn't the first time that I wondered if the plan to adopt a horse was more for her benefit than mine. "Wild horses will become extinct if these guys have anything to do with it," Mom sniffled. Not bothering to disguise her anger, she gestured toward a group of khaki-uniformed Bureau of Land Management agents. The men, each armed with a clipboard and a stack of papers, appeared to be making a deal with a group of pot-bellied cowboys in dirty jeans and western hats, looking like extras on the set of a John Wayne movie. I found a crumpled tissue in my pocket and handed it to her. She blew her nose in a soft, ladylike way and tossed the tissue in a garbage can. Then she turned and hurried away in the direction of her old green Jeep, squeezing between the grandstands of the arena. Left standing there, I had no choice but to break into a trot to catch up to her. "What do you mean? Didn't you say that these horses were up for adoption? That they'd go to a good home where kids like me could train them to ride?" My mother unlocked the doors to the Jeep and flung them open one at a time to let out the heat. She shook her head in disgust. I overheard a conversation between a few of the men who won the right to adopt them. Before the BLM guys got here, they were talking about the price of horse meat in Canada. The corn dog I'd eaten for lunch began to roil in my stomach. For a moment, I didn't believe her. She'd taken me to the roundup to try and adopt a horse of her own. We'd made arrangements to keep it at a neighbor's farm in return for cleaning extra stalls, because apart from the price of hay and board, we only had enough money for the adoption fee and the use of his trailer. But our name hadn't been drawn, and so we would have to try again next year. I didn't know then that there wouldn't be a next year. 5 months later, my mother was dead, killed by a drunk driver on her way home from work. For more information on Wild Ones and Lee Goodison, go to www.leegoodison.com. Thank you.